Okay, so my name is Uzodinma, Iweala, and I'm the CEO of the Africa Center, which is the space that you all are in today. And what is the Africa Center? Well, it's a place for Africa, to be very brief about it. But we're an institution that's really about changing the way that people think about the continent of Africa and its people. And one of the things that we do here is then, host events, discussions, talks, exhibitions, but mostly it's a space for community. And when we think about community, we think about not just Africans in the diaspora, but the broader global community of which we are a part. So when Jean, who I've known for a very long time and who's been an amazing mentor to me, she's actually the first person who hired me, believe it or not, asked if we could host this event tonight with Plus Wonder, we said yes. Why? Because it's really about connecting folks from all around the world, which is in the spirit of the center. And so I'm very grateful to have you all here for what I know will be an intense conversation, but a necessary conversation, discussion, and reflective period tonight, which I think is really important, especially in the times that we're in now, no matter where you are in the world, when we're facing challenges that I think can make anyone feel super crazy, for want of a better set of words to use. But I'm just really excited to have all of you here for this discussion. I really hope that everyone can just be present in this space and be together in this space. And Jean, I guess I would love for you to come up and introduce what's going to happen tonight. But thank you, everybody, for being here tonight.
And I had to giggle when Uzo said that I was his mentor, because he's my mentor. And I'm going to tell you how long ago, so you know how old I am, but he was very young at the time, 20 years ago. And Uzo, the reason that we met is because he helped us set up an amazing group called the Elders that work on behalf of humanity with no other agenda but the humanity and the planet. And I just want to also say thank you to Uzo. He has done so many amazing things for this world, and I'm so fortunate that he also sits on our Plus Wonder board, so massive thank you, Uzo. And I also want to, while I'm talking about the elders, just thank Prince Zaid, who's in the room. And he also, I just want to acknowledge the incredible work that he does to bridge peace in this world. I've never seen someone so committed every minute of his life towards that mission of human rights and justice and peace. And I also want to acknowledge Greg in the back of the room, who's going to kill me because I just did that, who's another Plus Wonder board member. And also Lindsay and Karen, raise your hands. Lindsay over here, who's on the camera, so she's not going to raise her hand, and Karen in the back of the room. They are the Plus Wonder team that helped pull this all together. So a massive thank you. I am so blessed to work with both of them. Bravo. But Delphine, where's Delphine? Back there, a huge thank you to Delphine. And also, I was going to say a massive thanks just to the Africa Center more broadly, and she's the one that helped make the magic happen, so thank you. And just right up front, I want to acknowledge, as Uzo started to say as well, that I just want to acknowledge that as a world, we are in collective trauma right now. And I also want to acknowledge everyone in this room that has in some way been impacted by any of the over 32 conflicts in the world right now. There's over 2 billion people in violent conflict, living in violent conflict every single day. Something in this world is clearly broken. And what's happened over the last couple days, I fear, is going to make that worse and worse right now. But in that moment of darkness, I always believe there's also this incredible moment of light and bright lights. And we have some of those folks, those bright lights in the room with us tonight from the Parent Circle. They are the ones with their wisdom, their grace, their ability to cross divides that are completely unimaginable, are like a compass for all of us in this world right now. And at Plus Wonder, the not-for-profit that's partnering with them, we really focus on how do we spark partnerships and collaborations of purpose. And what we found is some of the strongest partnerships that really change the course of history are those that cross immense differences and immense divides. And they're able to put their sides, they're able to dissolve their sides for something bigger in this world. And this is hard work. It is not easy. And I don't think there's any better example of a community that's done that and done that hard work than the Parent Circle. And we're just so fortunate. We feel so honored to have them here with us tonight and their voices in the room. And we're going to be handing over to them in a minute. But before we do that, we thought we'd open. We wanted to really bring the gift of music in the room to really help start the evening. And I have the immense pleasure to introduce a very, very dear friend of mine. She is an extraordinary musician. But she's also a unique musician because she bases her music in deep listening. And then she takes that wisdom and she shifts all of our perspectives. And then she helps us shift the world into a better direction. And she's also probably one of the kindest, most lovely human beings I've ever met. So Morley, come on up.
Thank you so much, Jean. It's a deep blessing to be here together with all of you. Thank you for coming, for making this togetherness that we're about to travel on. We're about to travel inside of our togetherness. And that is very powerful. This is my husband, Chris Bruce. He's going to join me. This is an invitation to breathe.
So much banking on our exhaustion, so much turning on our turning away, so much gliding on our division, but so much riding on our love power today. Come catch your breath with me. We can't unsee what we have seen. Come catch your breath with me. There's no way to outrun the need. Collective liberation. Heavy blanket on my heart. I can't move it off alone. Heavy blanket on this heart. We are all one soul. Come catch your breath with me. May all held captive on Mother Earth be set free. Come catch your breath with me. Sacred system of solidarity. ti. Breathe.
Thank you, Chris and Morley, and thank you for writing that beautiful song for tonight as well. And she's going to close us out with another song also, so just amazing. It's now my great honor to introduce Shiri, and Shiri is Executive Director of the American Friends of the Parent Circle Families Forum, and she's had years of experience in the not-for-profit sector. She also works as a coach to organizations and individuals trying to put purpose and also values at their center. But if you talk to her for 2 seconds, you'll see that her backbone, everything that she focuses on in her life, is about human rights, about justice, and about peace. And we got on the phone with Robi and Shiri, and Lindsay and I just got off the call, and we're like, we have to do this and partner with them. So Shiri, come on up.
Thank you for hosting us tonight and being our partner. And these days, it's not easy to find partners. So thank you, and thank you to the Africa Center for hosting us. I am not the main event of tonight, thank God. I have the privilege and the honor to work with incredible bereaved Israeli and Palestinians who have paid the highest price of the conflict. There are about 750 of those families, and all of them make up the Parent Circle, a joint Israeli-Palestinian organization of people who have said that this price should not come to anybody else, and we are going to do everything that we can to prevent that from happening. Tonight we have 4 members of the Parent Circle and a very special friend. They have been working incredibly hard all week. We are here in New York, and then some are going to Boston, some are going to LA, speaking to different groups of people on the ground, because unfortunately, we Americans have done a very good job at importing the Israeli and Palestinian conflict into our communities. And we have created intense polarization and divides, and the tensions are at an all-time high. Ever since October 7th, our phone has been off the hook, but communities pleading for our help. It's my great honor to introduce Layla Alsheikh from Bethlehem, Robi Damelin from Jaffa, Aramin from Jerusalem, Yonatan Zeigen from Tel Aviv, and our very dear friend Colum McCann, award-winning author of many novels, but the way that we met Colum was through the book A Paragon that he wrote about 2 of our members. Thank you, Colum, for being with us tonight. Thank you to all of our members. Before we do a lot of talking, I'm going to make a request, 2 requests. The first request is that you put aside your flags, your posters, your social media posts, and you listen from your heart. The second request is that we take a minute silence in memory of all of those who have lost their lives to the conflict needlessly.
Thank you to everybody for being here. My name is Colum. I'm honored to be here at the Africa Center, and we are all grateful for the invitation. There is a line from the Mu'allaqat, which were a series of 6th century poems called either the hanging poems or the suspended poems, that were put in marketplaces in places like Baghdad and Damascus, and in the early morning people would come along and they would read these poems. And one of the lines is there any hope that this desolation can bring us solace? We're going to talk about desolation, we're going to talk about hope, and we're going to talk about the possibility tonight of solace. And I know it might be strange to say it, but I am honored to be here with these people who are amongst the bravest I know, because they acknowledge the fact that they can use the force of their own grief as a weapon, as a proper sort of weapon. And I'm humbled to be in their presence. And I would like them to individually just tell their story for a moment, just briefly, and then we'll explore it further as we go along. I want to thank you all again for coming, and Morley and Chris, thank you for that song, and Uzo and Shiri for the work that you do, and Jean for that beautiful introduction, and this this possible repair of this broken world. So I would like to invite you to just, can you tell us a little bit about why you're here and your story, Layla?
First of all, hi, and thank you for inviting us today to share with you and to talk to you. My name is Layla, and I'm from Bethlehem. I lost my son. He was just 6 months old. His name was Qusay. That was in 11th of April 2002, 4 o'clock in the morning, when he woke up in very critical condition, because at that night the Israeli soldiers came to our village and they threw tear gas. And when we even tried to take him to a hospital, they prevented us for more than 5 hours. And when we finally reached the hospital, he died at that day. After 16 years, I became a member in the forum, and it's become my responsibility to spread the message of peace and reconciliation. It's not just because of me, not just because of my children, but for everyone, because we deserve a normal life, and we deserve everything better. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yonatan?
So on October 7th, 2023, I woke up in my apartment in Tel Aviv, realizing that something very unusual is happening, and I started to talk to my mother on the phone, that she lives in Kibbutz Be'eri, where I grew up. And I spent the morning with her trying to understand what's going on, and it was kind of impossible to grasp the scope and the fact that it's not going to be resolved. At some point, we realized that it's a good chance that this would be the end, and we managed to say goodbye, to say words of love to each other, and you know, a small summary of her life. And that was that. That feeling of helplessness drove me to also take control on my own narrative, but also feel a responsibility to utilize this this pain and grief and this new status of bereavement into being invested in change.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Robi?
When the army came to tell me that David, my son, had been killed by a Palestinian sniper, one of the first things that I said is, you can't kill anybody in the name of my child. I didn't really know that I said that, but I was told that afterwards. And I think that was very prophetic about what I would do with the rest of my life. And the Parents Circle found me, and my first memory of meeting Palestinian mothers was sitting around a table in East Jerusalem and looking into the eyes of the Palestinian mothers and realizing that we shared the same pain and that we could be such a powerful voice for change if we could stand on the stage, 1, 2, 3, 4, and speak in the same voice to make change, to speak in the same voice to end conflict for reconciliation. And so that's been going on for so many years. And I'm listening to Yonatan, and I'm thinking, I'm actually pleased that you had an opportunity to say goodbye.
Extraordinary. Thank you so much. And Arab.
I was born in East Jerusalem 14th of January, and I lost my sister Abir on 16th of January 2007. An Israeli soldier shot and killed her in front of her school. She was the third one in the house. I'm the oldest one. And after my sister, she got killed, I decided to revenge for her blood. And especially in the age of 13, I wasn't know there is a human being on the other side. Because all the Israelis that I have met until that age, only the soldiers who standing on the checkpoints, searching me, searching my family, searching my people. And also I couldn't know there is a human being on the other side because of the long walls between us.
Thank you. This deep search for humanity on the supposed other side, as if there's only one, or as if there's only two sides. Of course, we all know there's so much more than two sides, and there's so much more than two truths. One of the reasons why I'm here is that I got to meet Arab's father, Bassam, in Beit Jala in 2015, when he and his best friend, Rami Elhanan, sat at a table and literally sort of opened my rib cage and twisted my heart by telling their stories. I listened and I sat, and quite honestly, I cried my eyes out. And when I left that room, I didn't know what I could do, but I did feel that the world was laced together with the power of stories, and that somehow I might be able to do whatever small part I could. But I felt on that particular day that they were speaking directly to me. I'm sure some of you feel that way listening to the four people here tonight. And what I didn't know at that particular stage was that they had told that same story already 3 times that day. But I felt it hit me, and it was like it was eternally new. And one of the things that interests me is, like, every time I hear the story of Abir, every time I hear the stories of who you're talking about, it never seems to be something that's ever repeated. It's almost as if the pain exists, and it's absolutely there, and it will always be there. And that the story, no matter how much you tell it, has a particular power that reaches onto people. So I'd like to just ask you about storytelling, about repetition, and how does it feel to tell your story, Robi?
It's an extraordinary thing, but the more you tell your story, the more healing it is.
More, which is?
Healing. And when Palestinian women come to the parent circle, they've never had an opportunity to tell their story. And so the beginning is telling you all the graphic details, how much blood, where the gun was, what the distance was, how many bullets, all of the graphic details. But the more they tell the story, at some point, they start to talk about the person that died. And I think that's the next step in healing. And the personal story is a way to break into somebody else's heart. Even the hardest of hearts cannot not be affected by what you say. And I don't know how many thousands of times I've told the story of David. But I learned to live with it next to me. But I know how important it is for me personally, because his memory is always there. You know, I mean, Layla always says that so many people don't have an opportunity to tell their story. And I think to myself now, with all the children that have died, who knows the name of one of them? And who knows the story of the soldiers that died?
Right. Layla, 16 years, you've been telling this story. When was the first time you actually remember thinking, oh, I'm telling the story now and it's affecting the world?
I couldn't tell my story for 16 years, but I started to do it since 2017. And that was the first meeting that I met Israeli women. And they asked us to speak about something happened during the conflict. And that was the first time I spoke about him. Even between me and my husband, we didn't speak about him since his death. Like, we tried to ignore that because that was so hard for me. Until today, every time I spoke about him or even remember him, most of the time when Robi started to talk about David, I told her I feel jealous because she have many memories with him, but I can't. He's just 6 months old. When sometimes I look to the people at his age now and I start to think how he could look like and what kind of study that he maybe made or what kind of work. But in that meeting, I felt that there's a people that I feel secure to tell my story in front of them. But even that was so hard because even after 16 years, it was like to open the window again, bring the memories, the pain, everything. But there's an Israeli woman came and she standing in front of me and she started to apologize. And she said to me, yeah, I didn't hurt you, but the people who hurt you are my own people. But I'm still a mother and I could understand your pain. I could understand even the word that you couldn't say. And she came and hugged me. And to be honest, that was the first time I felt someone could understand me, someone could feel my pain. From that day, I decided to be a member in the forum.
Amazing. And how about you, Ara?
Actually, I was the biggest enemy for my family because they joined the parent circle. And after 7 years of thinking about the peace between me and myself, and a lot of things that I was thinking about, I joined the parent circle in 2014. And since that day, the parent circle means a lot to me and my life over there, because one of the reasons that I'm doing what I'm doing today, to save my son tomorrow, to change tomorrow for my son. And actually, it's very important to me and also to my family over here to change tomorrow for our kids. I don't want to lose a daughter or a son, how my father did. And I don't want my son to lose a sister or brother, like how I did. So it's the only way to change tomorrow.
And I will go forward, but I just want to ask you about the moment when that clicked for you, because there was a moment when you almost would have been lost.
So I have to explain a little bit about my story. After what happened to my sister, I stopped to go to the school anymore because my sister's school, it's in front of my school, and we was going together from the house to the school and waiting for her to get out of the school to go back together. So I find it so hard for me to go back again to the school. And also in that time, I was lying to my family that I'm going to the school every day, but I create a new school for myself, which is the checkpoint. And after a while, my family knew that I'm throwing stones on the checkpoint by one of my father's friends. So in that day, I went back home and my hero was waiting for me behind the door. And the first question was, how is your school? I said, it's great, and the teachers love me so much. So my father said, you start to lie, so we have to talk. And we start to talk. And he told me that he lost 7 years of his life in jail for nothing, and he's not ready to lose me in jail or under the ground. So in that day, I promised God and my father that I will stop revenging for my I will stop throwing stones, but I will never stop revenging for my sister's blood. And actually, what I'm doing today, it's revenge for my sister, but in a different way, without violence. And I hope I answered your question, Uncle.
Yeah, you have. And, you know, I remember talking to your father about that moment when he looked at you and said, don't do what I did, don't lose your life. Yonatan, your story is more recent and perhaps more raw, or maybe not more raw than maybe the rawness is always there. But you had to very quickly turn around and be brave and courageous and start to talk in this way. How does it feel to tell that story and to begin to see that you will probably tell the story for many days to come, if not all days to come?
I thought about your question for a few minutes now about the act of externalization when we tell our stories over and over. And it's an externalization, but not alienation, because we transform it from something raw that is devouring us from the inside into something of substance that creates meaning in the world. And for me, it allows me to hold my mother in a healing way. It allows me to create meaning out of her senseless, preventable, tragic death. I wish I was brave. I don't see it as bravery for me. I grew up in a political home. My mother was a very prominent peace activist in Israel, and I lost the word. I wasn't active for a long time. And October 7th burst my bubble in that sense and created a sense of urgency in me to be invested in that. And now I feel very connected to myself. So it's like kind of a gift I was given, which I would gladly not have gotten, but what we do with it, I feel, is a thing of importance.
Yeah, I mean, what it seems to me that what you do with it and what the parent circle does with it is intensely powerful and an incredible message. But not everybody hears this message, right? And not everybody is willing to listen to the message. Are there times when you think, you know, I'm just throwing my story out there in the wind, and does it ever strike you that you know, there's something else that could be done? You mentioned the idea of it being preventable. Do we think, or do you think, as a group, that stories can go through to the opposite side and begin to help the healing that is absolutely necessary?
I will tell you a short story. When I, at the beginning, become a member in the forum, they asked me to go to talk to girls who will go to the army. And at that time, the word army still struggling with. And I said to myself, just go there, tell your story, and leave. But when I went there and I looked at them, at that time, they are at the same age of my oldest daughter. So I said, I will talk to them from that point. So after we spoke about our story and about the organization, they start to have many questions. But one of them, she looked at me and she said, so what do you want from us? Don't serve in the army? And I said, oh my God, how could I answer that? Then I look at her and I said, look, I have a girl at your age, and I love her much more than anyone in this world. But at the same time, I can't control her life. I could give her advice. If she works with it, it's okay. If not, it's okay. And this is what I'm going to do to you. If you choose to be in the army, and I know, if not, what will happen to you, but if you choose to be in the army, please be human. Look to every person in front of you as a human like you. Don't look to his color, don't look to his religion. And then she started to cry. And after we finish, they have many, many other questions. So when I returned back home, that was kind of something to think about much more deeply. So I started to look at them as a victim. Like when you send a child at the age of 18 or 19 with a gun in that crazy situation. So I start to understand what's going on. It's not like I give them excuse for what they are doing, but to start to understand what's going on. And I think after that, all of them start to think about what they heard, because for me as a Palestinian, we just met settlers or soldiers, but to meet people like Yonatan or Robi, we didn't have any chance. And even for them, as children, let's say, I don't think that they met any Palestinian. Maybe that was the first time they sit and they listen and they understand about a checkpoint and they listen about the wall. They listen about the story, how the soldiers came at the middle of the night and they kick my children from their bed and ask them to leave because they want to search the house without anything. Like my children, they were just so small to be involved in any violence activity.
Right. Thank you. Robi, a very direct question. Do you despair?
If I did, I'd be at home knitting sweaters.
So why don't you?
Because I'll tell a story. You know I like telling stories. When there was the disengagement from Gaza of the settlers who had to leave an area called Gush Katif, we decided at the parent circle that we needed to go to talk to the settlers, even though we didn't agree with them, but they deserved some empathy because they would have to leave their homes. So we went to Gush Katif, about 10 of us, and they drove us around Gush Katif in a very messianic way, as if God was going to save them. And I've got a very vicious tongue, right? But I've learned over the years that it doesn't contribute to anything. And we went into the house of this woman, and she was sitting there, and I looked around me and I thought, geez, it's so easy for you. You don't have to move out of your house. And then she said, I can't leave because my daughter's buried here. And in the old days, this is the rhetoric of peacemaking that you learn. In the old days, I would have said something like, yes, and how many soldiers need to die before you will? But I didn't. I said to her, you're a mother, and I'm a mother. And the Palestinian across the road is also a mother, and all three of us have lost children. Wouldn't you do anything to prevent another mother from experiencing this pain? And I think all of these stories contribute to growing, to not closing people down. And so if people don't agree with me, I have discovered that when they hear a personal story from Layla, or from Arab, or from Yonatan, it's a kind of emotional breakthrough, even if they don't agree with you afterwards. Of course, there are people who say, don't listen to that woman, she's poisoning your minds, you know, and then, of course, everybody wants to throw that person out of the room. But that's the one that you want to stay. You learn over the years how to cope with that. And I don't despair because I think hope is such an important part of the equation of finding peace. I haven't given up hope.
Thank you. Your mother, Yonatan, she didn't give up hope. Can you talk about her and her sense of hope?
I remember for a while that she never gave up her activities. There was a point in time where she retired, 2014, when my first child was born, and we thought she will going to knit sweaters, sit at home, and she couldn't. It was a part of her identity. I thought maybe she was a bit addicted to it. And she immediately after retirement started being involved in women wage peace and driving Palestinian patients from Gaza to Israeli hospitals, sitting on boards. That was her entire life. And I would taunt her a bit. And now I can say, maybe I was jealous of her, that she never gave up her convictions. And I couldn't. I went to what I call a political coma for a few years because of kids and work and peace being so distant and irrelevant in Israel and Palestine. And she told me, that in the same week, there was a peak of violence in Northern Ireland and then the Good Friday Agreement. It can happen tomorrow, but we have to be there in order to bring that tomorrow. So that was her way of thinking. All the time she thought about tomorrow. Because today is just on its way to become tomorrow.
Beautifully said. And as somebody who grew up in Ireland and saw the peace agreement and has studied the peace agreement, I will tell you that at the age of 16, I never would have believed that there would be peace in Ireland, and all the way up until 1998, when I was in my, in my 30s, 40s, 30s. I still didn't believe it would happen, but it has happened, and we've had peace in Northern Ireland now for 27 years. It's shaky in parts, but it's there, and it presents me with the possibility of hope. But I want to go to you, Arab, and ask, as a young Palestinian man living under occupation, how can you have hope?
I think the biggest example for me is over here. My Israelis friends and the Israelis families that we have in the parent circle, and also they are my family because we are one big family. And the second thing, without hope, there is no life. And it's the only thing that we still have, or otherwise we're gonna lose everything. So if I will lose hope, I will lose my life, I will lose my home, I will lose my kid. And it's the only thing that I won't lose it ever.
So you're not a pessimist?
No.
What's life like that right now, and driving around and trying to exist? You're in Ramallah at the moment, but your family is in your family in East Jerusalem and then also in Jericho.
Yeah, I would like to share a short story about my life, and I think it will present the occupation for you. I was born in East Jerusalem, and I got an Israeli ID or Jerusalem ID because of my mother. She was born in East Jerusalem. And my father, he has a Palestinian ID, and I think I did the same mistake with my wife. She has a Palestinian ID, so we can't travel together as a small family to somewhere. And 2 weeks ago, before I come to here, I wanted to take my family to somewhere because I said maybe I will be a little bit far from them for a little bit time. So we couldn't go, me and my wife, with our little kid to the sea, because both of us, we have an Israeli ID, me and my son, and my wife, she has a Palestinian ID. Without an Israeli permission, she can't be with us. And it's one story of the occupation. And I will share a few things about my daily life there. I live in East Jerusalem to West Jerusalem. It's a 20 minutes, but it took with me like sometimes 2.5 hours or 3 hours, because I have to go through 2 checkpoints or 3 checkpoints, and the soldiers who standing on the checkpoints, they have to search me once and twice. And yeah, it just a little bit kind of my life, which is looks like.
Your father measures his time at the checkpoints by how many cigarettes he smokes at a checkpoint.
He doesn't have to go to a checkpoint to measure the amount of cigarettes he smokes. He never stops. But I'm sorry, I want to interfere because you asked Arab about the West Bank. And I think it's very important to talk about the West Bank because Gaza is on the news all the time. And the West Bank has been under closure for a year. And people cannot go to work. So the economic situation is desperate. And the children are not going to school regularly. And think about the domestic violence that happens when men are stuck at home for a year. And think how terrible it is that the settlers are running rampant with no accountability. And I also think about the Israelis, because of this whole situation, who are stuck out of their homes. The same situation is happening of a whole family living in a room. Domestic violence, anger, economic stress, houses, rockets. People have no idea what that's like. You know, I told you earlier that there were masses of rockets outside my house. But I'm a bit deaf, so I couldn't hear the siren, but my cat charges into, I mean, whoever thought a cat would rush into a safe room? And so I then recognized that there are rockets. But we have to look at Gaza, for instance. How did this happen, for God's sake? It's not something new. What happened in Gaza? How did these kids, who every 2 years were exposed to a war, were exposed to bombing, had no shelters, watched their mothers running away with their siblings and having no hope, no freedom of movement, living in a sort of jail? How would those kids, what kind of adults are they? And then the kids on the kibbutzim who thought they were invincible, you know, and suddenly this 7th of October happens and suddenly they're not invincible. And the kids that live in Sderot and Ashkelon and Ashdod, all the towns surrounding Gaza, who've been exposed to rockets since they were very small and are wetting their beds at the age of 12. This is the responsibility that we have, and you were talking about solace. Right. And now we have to talk to all of these bereaved families. It's not the person who dies. It's the families that are left behind. And that's the duty that we have at this moment. 20 new families from October the 7th have joined the parent circle already, 2 to 3 months after. Only 3 families out of 700 have left, and that gives me hope.
Thank you. Layla, you're in Bethlehem. So can you take what Robi was saying about being in the West Bank, and what's the atmosphere there now, and what's going on with the young people? We will get to Gaza in a moment, but what's it like being in the West Bank as a mother and looking at what's going on?
In fact, every day become much worse and worse. First of all, it was the closure. All the men lost their jobs. My children, most of the time, they couldn't go to school. And even if they could, they just go for one day. Imagine for a whole year how that destroyed their life. The soldiers every time could came, anytime, search any house. They could beat anyone without any reason, and no one could say anything. I have my oldest son now, he's 21 years old. He works in a company. Sometimes he went to like Jericho or Ramallah or Hebron. Every day, I call him maybe more than 100 times to check where he is, what's going on with him. Because 2 months ago, he'd been in Hebron, and a Palestinian and Israeli, they get fight, they work together and they get fight, and one of them stabbed the other. So they closed the road, and my son stuck in the road in his car from 12 afternoon until 9 o'clock in the evening. So imagine how much I've been scared about him. I called him and he said, Mom, they shoot tear gas. I said, please be safe, close the windows, don't leave your car because maybe they will shoot you. If they ask you to give them your ID, just give it to them. And that reminded me of what happened to his brother, because I give him the same name. And that was something so terrifying me every day. Like every day when someone knock on my door or call me, I pray to God that I don't want to hear that message again to tell me, we are sorry you lost your son. I don't want to live like that all my life. I don't want my children to live like that. I want them to feel secure and safe, to do whatever they want without being afraid. But unfortunately, settlers everywhere, and they could attack anyone, anytime. And the problem that the soldiers supported them, and no one could stand in front of them.
Thank you. Which brings us to the word that you brought up just a few minutes ago about preventability. Why do you use that word? And tell us how it could have been preventable or how it might be preventable in the future.
Well, as we hear and as we, I hope, know, October 7th wasn't, it didn't start history. It didn't happen in a vacuum. This conflict has been going on for over 100 years. The occupation has been going on for about 60 years. And I always say that it's not that we don't want peace because it's complicated. Peace is complicated because we don't want it. And there was so many possibilities to genuinely sit across the table and reach an agreement for both people to share the land. And it could be a federation, it could be a majority ruled one state, it could be two states. It doesn't really matter. As long as Arab can go to the beach, as long as we can enjoy equal human rights from the river to the sea. And it's a question of will. Because there's only two options for the future. One of extermination and one of a shared future. And I believe that it's very simple and that the technicalities will be worked out very shortly if we just genuinely, humbly, and with equity-based thinking, sit down to the table and reach an agreement.
Absolutely. Arab, how do you feel about that and about preventability and about the possibility of some sort of peaceful agreement, whether it be a federation, a confederation, 8 states, whatever it happens to be, and this whole idea about recognizing one another's humanity to create a sort of mosaic nation?
Actually, I think it's the most important thing now. It's not the land, and also it's not the flags or the states. We can live in 2,000 states and with 13,000 flags. I think the most important thing right now, the humanity of each other. As Mahmoud Darwish says, we're killing each other for Jerusalem, and we're losing ourselves for Jerusalem. And in the end, we go under Jerusalem, and Jerusalem don't know about us. So our souls and selves and kids, it's more important than the land. And actually also we have a big problem that we know one face of each other, which is the hate and the enemies or the blood of each other. And with my small experience in life and in pain, I learned that every story has two faces, one bad and one good. And as I said right now, we always try to choose the bad face of each other because we never met each other as a human being. And things take time.
Thank you. I want to ask both of you the same question about history and preventability and the possibility of peace. Layla?
Of course, I believe one day there will be peace. If we look to the history of many nations who've been are having this kind of war or conflict, one day we will have peace. When? I don't know. How? I don't care. The only care that I think about is to feel or to give my children and the generation will come after them a reason to live because they deserve. We believe that every soul is so precious and God created us to live and to love each other. I will tell you a short story. When my son died, at that night, I have a dream about white dove came and stand on my shoulder and say to me, "Mama, don't cry, I'm so happy." I know that he's happy with God because he was just 6 months old, but I didn't understand why he came as a white dove. But when I become a member in the forum, I start to realize that the white dove is the symbol for peace. It was kind of message from God to tell me, this is your new mission in your life. And like he didn't want the death of my child went without achieving something. And if my child died to let thousands of people from both sides to live, okay, I will agree about this.
You know, I grew up in South Africa, and I came to Israel in 1967 to save Israel in the Six-Day War. But when I think about it, if you would have told me then, after growing up and being in the anti-Apartheid movement and thinking I was a big deal, if you would have told me then that whites and blacks actually would sit together in the same room and not kill each other, I probably would have said you were mad. So I think that something like that can actually happen for us. Otherwise, I can't see any point in doing this work day and night for all the years that I've been doing it. I believe there's a possibility for peace, and I believe in human beings, that you can change. If you don't believe that people can change, there's no point in the work that we're doing. And that's why it's so important to tell these stories and to let people understand and see that there are human beings on the other side. And I love Israel. Please don't make any mistakes. But I cannot bear to live in this immoral situation.
I think those 4 answers deserve a round of applause. I do want to open it up to a few questions in a minute or two, but I feel like I'm in the presence of great grace and courage. But what a lot of people might not realize is that there's also some opposition to the ideas that you might hear here on the stage.
Some opposition, that's like a but so, I'm supposed to do the advertising, otherwise they're going to fire me. So, you know, you might wonder what we're doing here. This is the 5th time I've been to America since the beginning, since October. There is this need all over the world for some hope. And there is this polarization which is destroying the world. And everybody is now a major expert on the Middle East. They don't give a damn about Sudan or Ukraine or Ethiopia or anything like that. Israel is now Israel-Palestine. That's the fashion. If the World Bank has to ask me to come to talk because the Jewish people are not talking to the Muslims, I find that pretty pathetic. So we came to Washington, and there was this huge request for us to do dialogue meetings from companies, from schools, from churches, synagogues, big community centers, all these things. And of course, we don't have the manpower to cope with that. Georgetown University have been our wonderful mentors for so many years. And we came to give a talk to the students, and then we went to talk with the president. And by the way, the talk with the students was incredible because nobody was allowed to bring flags or placards or anything. They just sat there and were exposed to some sense of understanding. So over dinner, we told the president of Georgetown that we need to create something online. And I think we're going to show a very small clip, otherwise I'll get fired. Now.
Can't get you fired, but let's show that small clip. And
okay.
An Israeli border police shot and killed my 10-year-old daughter, Abir.
They've killed 5 people that day. One of these girls was my 14-year-old Smadar.
When we reached the hospital, they said it's too late to save his life.
The army came to tell me that David had been killed by a Palestinian sniper.
About 8:13 in the morning, they were shot with an RPG grenade, and all 4 of the soldiers, including Yanai, were killed at the post.
I heard the stories of the Israeli and how they lost their beloved ones. That was the first time I looked at them as a human like me.
If we can call each other brother, anyone can, anyone should.
I wanted to do something to prevent other mothers, just like you and me, from experiencing this kind of pain.
If you want to make peace with your enemy, you need to work with your enemy. Then your enemy become your partner.
I'm here and I'm in terrible pain at the loss of my son, but I also see your pain.
What do you think about the international reactions to the violence in Israel and Palestine?
When I show empathy for one side, I'm told I'm being anti-Semitic or anti-Palestinian. How should we deal with that?
The work you are doing actually has an impact. How do you know?
But if there's one word that you wanted to land upon, just one word that you wanted to land upon for the people listening here this evening, or maybe that's not fair to do just one word, but how would you like to summarize what it is, why you are here? We know you're here for the Parent Circle. We know the Parent Circle does incredible things. We know we want you all to reach into your pockets and look after the people in the Parent Circle tonight. Yes, and all these initiatives are going along. But there's another reason behind why you have decided to come here. And I can feel it in the grace. I can feel it in the power of how you relate to the stories. Part of me thinks that it's almost like a Sherazadian thing, that you're telling the story in order to keep the person alive. But I'd like to give you an opportunity just to say Yeah, like really honestly, what is it that brought you here? Why are you doing this?
I feel I answered that question through the conversation, and I give you, the responsibility and the agency to decide what to take out of this meeting. Yeah.
Arab.
I will say it very short. Actually, it was very important to me to come here to talk to you Americans because you can help us that much, but without taking a side and leaving the other side. I think you can help us a lot to be about justice and humanity for both sides, Palestinians and Israelis. And also, as I said yesterday, and you laughed about me, we don't want you to bring our conflict to your country. I think you have more than enough in your own. And your voice is very important to the Palestinians and Israelis conflict. So please try to help us, both sides.
Robi?
For me, I want people to understand why.
Layla?
If one word, I will choose peace.
If there are any brief questions before we go into Morley and Chris, we're going to finish off the evening for us. Start back here.
It's not really a question. As a father who lost a young daughter myself, I just want to take it upon myself so all of us don't have to bombard you afterwards, to acknowledge each and every one of your heartbreaking losses and to extend my gratitude for demonstrating the most powerful form of Viktor Frankl's search for meaning, this unique ability of human beings to take unbearable heartbreak and turn it into something meaningful in the names of your loved ones. I really do, it's incredibly powerful, and I know I'm not alone in feeling it, but I just think it's necessary to acknowledge the losses that brought you to this place and to this really heroic work.
Thank you. Very nicely put. Sir, at the back in the blue shirt.
So I had the rare opportunity or memorable opportunity of meeting with these four people Monday intimately, which I'm grateful for. My question is, yes, we can, in the United States and other parts of the world, be helpful in our own way. But at the end of the day, as you've all so eloquently talked about, it's ultimately the Israelis and Palestinians that have to figure out a way to live together. And hearing your stories is so powerful for me, and I imagine for many people. And I'm wondering, how much opportunity do you have to tell your stories as a group, as you have tonight, to Israelis and Palestinians in both Israel and Palestine?
I want to first address your first thing you said, that you Americans can be helpful. It's not a question of can. You have accountability. I'm not talking about you in the room, but the American administration has actively enabled the status quo and the occupation and the conflict up until October 7th, and has actively sponsored the war since. And there's a crucial role, because we, on the ground, we have a blind spot. We think of security or oppression as the problem, while the problem is the occupation and the conflict. And security is just a symptom of that. And we have to have a signal from the international community, from the from the administrations all over the world that are enabling this situation, we have to have a signal from them that we have a problem that needs fixing. And the way to do that is not with unconditional aid and not with unconditional diplomatic relations. There needs to be an international alliance that has the authority to offer incentives to do the right things and inflict sanctions. So there's accountability for the United States. The other part of your question is it depends on the timing. I'll let Robi address that.
So we have been speaking in schools. We've been the only cross-border organization that spoke in schools for many, many years. More or less what you saw here is what we do in classrooms to 17-year-olds. And the government, in its great wisdom, decided to ban us from schools. Of course, we didn't just take this lying down. We actually went to court. It was interesting because the judge was a settler from the settlements, but he threw the Ministry of Education out of court and we got damages. But of course now it's starting up again and the same thing. So we've spoken, where is that man? To thousands and thousands of kids aged 17. We also have a summer camp for kids. And again, the government in its great wisdom actually had a debate. There are not enough problems in Israel and Palestine. They have to decide whether 14 to 17-year-old kids can have a summer camp, bereaved kids. And the American government and the German government intervened and we were then allowed to have the summer camp. And I can't tell you how important that is. This year, because of the closure, we had to take the summer camp for healing to Cyprus, because this is something that these kids need desperately. They all spoke about peace and love and you name it, but then came the war and we were talking about nuance. They ain't nuanced. They were very angry with each other. And then my grandchildren all go to the summer camp. One of them is, the youngest, is pretty spoiled, you got to admit. And I mean, he's been to London and done all those things that most kids dream of. But he said to me at the end of the summer camp, you know what, Safdor? This is the best week I've ever spent. And here comes the understanding why. It's the alleviation of the not knowing of the other, because suddenly the Palestinian kids, for him, were exactly the same as his friends at school. And this is what we need as much as possible.
Thank you. No.
Thank you so much. I'm so in awe of the hopefulness in your voices. And I wonder how, because I am, as an Israeli, so much younger than you are. I lost so much less than you have lost. I don't feel hope right now. And you're shunned from school. Every time I hear about the forum, it's only on Memorial Day when everyone rallies against the joint ceremony. And how? Just how?
I could tell you how. Every time when I look to the eyes of my children, I feel they deserve to have a better life, and I should stand and fight every day. The easiest thing is to go and take revenge. But for me, I didn't think to take revenge, because revenge will never bring my son back. But the real revenge is stand and try to do something. I will tell you a short story. I love to tell stories. After I become member on the forum, start to give lectures inside Israel-Palestine, travel around the world, I thought that I made everything right and life become so great. 2 years ago, we've been in Jerusalem, me and Robi, with other people from other NGOs, and after we spoke about our stories, there's an Israeli man who stand up. His name is Khin Alon. And he's a friend of mine, but that was the first time I listened to his story. And then he mentioned that he was a high officer in the army, and he served in my area. And he prevented a Palestinian couple which have sick children from going to hospital. So imagine that. It's like someone slapped me in my face. In my whole life, I didn't thought that I will meet one of those soldiers, and to be him, one of those. That was so hard for me. I didn't know what to do or what to say. Then I started to cry. And Robi asked both of us to go outside. Then he said to me, look, I know this is hard for you, but this is so important for me to tell you. And then he mentioned that after time, his son becomes sick. And when he tried to take him to a hospital, the guard stopped him because they want to ask him a few questions. And then he said, just then I realized what I did to the Palestinian. He quit from the army and he didn't serve again, and he jailed because of that. And he established another organization called Compassion for Peace with other Palestinian ex-fighter. And I looked to him and I said, look, Khan, this is hard for me to listen to your story, but at the same time, I want to thank you. First of all, because I know what you try to do to end this occupation. You try so hard to work in the ground. And the second thing, if that part of your story was there and you didn't tell me, I will never forgive you. But because you have that courage and honesty to speak in front of my face, I will forgive you. Then I realized this is the real reconciliation. It's so easy to speak about peace and love, but sometimes you ask yourself if you really mean it, if you meant everything you said or everything you did. Just that day I realized this is the real thing that I choose, and I will continue whatever happened, even in these dark times. These dark times, they are the days that we should stand and speak and do everything that we could. Thank you.
So I want to ask you, are you a student?
Yes, master student.
Okay. So we're working with the students now, and I think it's the first time that Palestine has been on the map for so many years, right? And so maybe instead of demonstrating or whatever's happening, because here's the core, how to make a difference. There are so many organizations working on the ground, Combatants for Peace, Women Wage Peace, the Parents Circle, Breaking the Silence, many Palestinian NGOs who are working on the ground. What if you each decided on an NGO that you fancy, that you like the work, and supported them? Wouldn't that make a difference in the life of Aramin, Layla and me and Yonatan, instead of giving up? You can be such a powerful force if you did that. The fact that you even know about the ceremony is extraordinary. So go for it. You know, it's no good sitting at home and weeping, because that's not going to do anything. And also, you know, other people who live in New Jersey don't like to compromise too much.
And the courage of your question is something that gives us hope in the first place. Final question, the gentleman down here with his hand up. And then we're going to have some music.
Thank you. Thank you all for being here. I have seen you all online so many times, I've lost count. I know you all very well, full of incredible gratitude. But to see you here in the flesh tonight is a dream come true. Thank you so much. My question has to do with Arab. You mentioned something like a mosaic, as a mosaic, something in that part of the world. And in this part of the world, that sounds pretty good. You know, mosaic, diversity, things like that, at least in theory. Not so sure on the ground anymore. How do we hold that vision of a mosaic or some image like that with the commitment of many to the Jewish state? How do we hold both of those?
In my personal utopia, there are no divisions. I'm a universalistic person. And no nation states, no religions. Sorry, Layla.
It's like a John Lennon song.
But then we have to we have to do the journey backwards from the utopia to reality. And we have to acknowledge the fact that the world is divided into nation states. Okay, so let's keep the Jewish state, but everybody has the same right for self-determination. So you're going into the direction of a two-state solution, right? Palestinians having a state of their own. It can also work, like we said, as a federation, as a co-federation, as two peoples sharing the land with different types of authority. It doesn't matter. It's the basic notion of equity in power and in rights. So if you fight for the rights of the Palestinians, in the same time you're fighting for the rights of the Jewish people as well. Because everybody should enjoy the equal right for self-determination, for liberation. We are talking about co-liberation. That doesn't take away anything from the Jews. It only elevates them.
I want to, as they come up, just thank you all again for coming. I want to thank these tremendously brave people for sharing the story. And I want us all to realize that the stories never end. And I want to be them to get a huge round of applause from you as individuals.
I wanted to stand here. I didn't tell you this, Chris, but just came to me that we should make a circle because now we're a family in the Family Circle Forum. And these are words taken from watching the movie, the documentary, The Day After Peace, and hearing your words in other talks I've watched online. So thank you for you. And that in some way, music is invisible and the hope itself is invisible, but it's the action. And you are giving some kind of golden vision to the action, to hope, giving some kind of vision to the invisible for me personally.
Tell me a story, I'll tell you mine. We've got to be ready for peace in our time. Here in our story, where we can see our own reflection and each other's humanity. We know the grief, we know the cost. We walk in the love of the ones we've lost. Every second of every minute, of every hour, of every breath we breathe is holy love. here in the light, one in the circle, bridging divides. We listen to the heart, we listen to the tears, we listen to that point, we see no other, no fear. The breaking of bread, the seeing the friend, the showing the way for the cycle to end. Listen from the heart, listen to the tears, listen to the point of seeing no other, having no fear, breaking the bread, seeing the friend. You're showing the way to the world for the cycle to end. Into forever, here in the light, the ones who are yours, the ones who are mine. Into forever, here in the light, one in the circle, bridging divides. Hope is the drum, hope is the drum, heart to heart, heart to heart. Can we sing that? Heart to heart, heart to heart, yeah, one sound. Heart to heart, one voice, heart to heart. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Morley, and thank you, Chris. That was beautiful. And I just want to say thanks, Colum, to you as well for being here. And one of Colum's threads in his new book is around moral courage. And I think we all felt that deeply tonight from every single person on the stage. And Layla, I think none of us will ever see a dove in the same way again. I think all of us will see those doves and think about our responsibility to fight for peace and your son, and he will live through that constantly. And I think if anyone doesn't hear Robi and her call to action, then they don't have a heartbeat. So I feel like Robi's call to action around getting behind the parent circle and figuring out how all of us in this room can come together and support these extraordinary human beings who have such deep courage. And I think, you know, Arab and Yonatan, you gave us all a really clear call to action and responsibility. And I loved how you phrased, Arab, you said, to change tomorrow for my son. And Yonatan, you said, you have to be there in order to bring that tomorrow. And I think that's a huge call to action to every single one of us in this room to think about when we leave here tonight, who and what are we going to love into being for that tomorrow? What are the things we're going to do? How can we get behind Parent Circle? How can we find out about that road to peace? And I think Luke has said it so beautifully as well about the thing that I am most grateful for tonight is that all of you came here to share your stories with us. And so I'm going to ask everyone to get off your feet to thank them properly for this extraordinary evening.